this is a religion for all of humanity, is it not? You know, Islam doesn't just belong to the Arabs or belong to the Pakistanis or the Indians or the Africans. If we truly believe that this is a message for all of humanity, why wouldn't we want to share it? If other Muslims in the past hadn't shared it, we wouldn't be sitting here, we wouldn't be Muslims, right? When they see someone like you and me just on the street, for them that's a safe space, right? They're in the street. We can't start lecturing them and forcing them to sit down and listen to a sermon or something. Sometimes they'll walk up to you and say, brother, I just have a question. I've got a non-Muslim girlfriend. She's kind of interested in Islam, and what do I do now? And they come up to you, which maybe they would be shy or embarrassed to speak about it with their imam in the mosque. And finally, you're helping yourself too, because you're reminding yourself that I should expect better from myself if I'm here representing Islam.
From what I get is 3 benefits. You're not only calling non-Muslims to Islam, you're helping Muslims who have questions, who have perhaps doubts in their deen, and then you're also helping yourself. So I see 3 levels of benefit. How do you prepare for that? How do you get ready then for street dawah? How do you become an effective street da'i?
No, I'm not worried at all. I rely on God, Allah.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another great episode of the Life Haqq podcast with that Canadian brother, our akhi, and I'm going to just say it because we're still learning from you, our Ustadh Sadat Anwar, to today's episode. I'm going to get right into it. I'm just head first into the conversation because I know the brother is passionate about something, and I just want to delve into that passion. Street dawah, why? Why is it important?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was moved when I was like a teenager and I saw some Muslims doing street dawah on Yonge Street in Toronto, and I thought that was a pretty cool thing. And then I also watched the film Malcolm X, 1992, and you see them street pamphleteering and preaching to people. I thought, wow, it takes a really kind of high level of confidence to do that. Yeah. So, yeah, I toyed with it. I toyed with it once or twice in my teen years. But, you try things and then it trails off and you don't stick with it and all that. I guess that when I became more regular was I lived in London, England for 3 years. So I was going to Hyde Park for the Speaker's Corner.
Okay.
So that's street dawah experience. Then when I came back to Canada, I was missing that experience. So fortunately, there were still some brothers who were doing street dawah at Yonge and Dundas in front of the Eden Centre in Toronto. And they do that every Sunday. So I thought, that's where I can get my fix. Yeah. And I joined them, and I've been doing that. I join them every Sunday, and it's fun.
It's a very eclectic scene in that Yonge and Dundas area. I remember, because you mentioned Malcolm X and street, I remember many years ago when I was first married, I went with my wife and we were walking down Yonge Street, and there were people from the Nation of Islam handing out pamphlets and things of that nature. Yeah. And they were, pretty, aggressive, saying, "Hey, brother," blah, blah, blah. And then I remember that at that time, I said, okay, I really don't want to engage with these guys right now. But then I didn't see them back again. Like, I've been in that area, and I'm glad to see that we have a good representation of Islam now.
When it comes to Islam, it's always going to be Sunni Muslim dominated street dawah in Toronto without any doubt. Yeah. At Yonge and Dundas, Nation of Islam is a very rare occurrence now. Yeah.
They're handing out that Muhammad speaks. I remember
or the final call, maybe the final call. And again, the Qadiani is very, very rare, very rare appearance. It's Alhamdulillah Sunni Muslim dominated. And can I say one thing about Nation of Islam here, about the street dawah? What I noticed was that they kind of dropped the bow ties and the suits.
Okay.
And they stopped putting out the final call, and they just started giving out booklets on Black history and Black inventors, and they were just asking people for donations. Donate, So, I mean, it's just a guess on my part, but I'm thinking that maybe they weren't that effective in their dawah, and they thought, okay, if we want to raise some money, forget about this final call Nation of Islam stuff. Let's just sell them Black history, generic Black history, and ask for donations. It's just a guess on my part, because it was the same people, but just they dropped the bow ties and they weren't talking about Nation of Islam anymore, unless they quit and they're just doing their own freelancing thing. I don't know.
Is it important to get involved in street dawah? What would you say to the average young Muslim coming up? Should we get involved in street dawah?
Yes, absolutely. Because just going back to basics, going back to like fundamentals. This is a religion for all of humanity, is it not? Islam doesn't just belong to the Arabs or belong to the Pakistanis or the Indians or the Africans. If we truly believe that this is a message for all of humanity, why wouldn't we want to share it? Why wouldn't we want to share it? And if other Muslims in the past hadn't shared it, then you and I, we were talking about our backgrounds, our ethnic backgrounds. We wouldn't be sitting here. We wouldn't be Muslims. We'd be worshiping something else and doing something else, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's part of the spreading of the message, part of the propagation of the message. And there's so many other side benefits that come out as a result of that. You end up helping other Muslims, because there's so many Muslims that are unmosqued, I think is the term. They're kind of disconnected from the mosque.
Okay.
They're not... they're not going to be comfortable speaking to the imam in the mosque about their problems. But when they see someone like you and me just on the street, and for them, that's a safe space, right? They're in the street. We can't start lecturing them and forcing them to sit down and listen to a sermon or something. Sometimes they'll walk up to you and say, brother, I just have a question. I've got a non-Muslim girlfriend, and she's kind of interested in Islam, and what do I do now? And they come up to you with problems like that, which maybe they would be shy or embarrassed to speak about it with their imam in the mosque. So you get an opportunity to kind of advise, counsel other Muslims. And finally, you're helping yourself too, because you're reminding yourself, and you're subconsciously you're reminding yourself that I should expect better from myself. I should expect better from myself if I'm here representing Islam. At least for this 1 or 2 hours, let me be on my best behavior. Let me not get upset.
So from what I get is 3 benefits. You're not only calling non-Muslims to Islam, you're helping Muslims who have questions, who have perhaps doubts in their deen, who have issues that they're dealing with, and then you're also helping yourself. So I see 3 levels of benefit in regards to that. How do you prepare for that? How do you get ready then for street dawah? How do you become an effective street da'i?
Yeah. Well, again, I was talking to you about this earlier on. Ideally, in an ideal world, there would be more brothers such as yourself, who have some Islamic training and some Islamic background, proper traditional training, marrying that with, street activism or some kind of activism in the dawah scene, this podcast even, right? So the reality is a bit different. I think people who pursue scholarly learning, they're often not interested in doing dawah, on the street level, and vice versa. There's people who are interested in dawah, unfortunately myself included, are not like traditionally trained. I'm not madrasa trained or anything like that. So that's why I'm that Canadian brother, not that Canadian ustad, not that Canadian talibul ilm, just a regular Muslim who's interested in doing dawah. But more to your question, what I would say is that there is the hadith about balighni walau ayah. Is that right? Convey from me, even if it's one verse, one ayah of the Quran, one teaching.
So that's what you've been trying to do, is take whatever even the basics, and from I feel people don't appreciate how effective that is. Just whatever basic that can be powerful, because most people, I think people fail to understand that is the beauty of Islam, is that you could take the greatest intellectual to ponder about Islam, and they can go into all the nooks and crannies and crevices and just bring out jewel after jewel.
Yes.
But then for the average person, it's like pure water.
Yeah.
It's like there's a thirst of that, just a la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Yes, exactly. So, the basics that we know, at least we can communicate that. And to be honest with you, Dr. Syed, the thing is, in street dawah especially, I can tell you, it's the same handful of questions that are coming at you again and again and again.
Yes.
So
that's a good point.
You don't have to be a trained scholar. People should understand that. It's the same questions coming at you again and again and again. Over time, you end up developing a script, about how I answer that question. And what are those questions? Jihad, violence. Women, why do women have to cover their head? Why do they have to wear hijab? If it's a Christian, you say that you follow Jesus. Well, then why don't you believe he's God? Because he said that he's God in the Bible. So it's the same handful of questions. And if you prepare good answers for those, then really you're set to go, right? Like someone's not gonna walk up to you and ask about the fiqh of jewelry in Maliki fiqh. The things like that don't usually happen. And when it happens, then this is a very important point, Dr. Syed, is that people such as myself and have to remember to just to kind of stay in our lane. And so when we get that kind of a offbeat question, which we don't have the answer to, then we have to refer them then to the masjid, to the imam, to the scholar, and say, give that question to them, you know.
Yeah, just be able to half of knowledge, since you mentioned Imam Malik,
La
saying,
adri.
La adri, you know, I
Right.
don't know. And I think definitely you have to be humble enough to say that. What would you say has been your most memorable encounter or experience in the da'wah?
I think some of my most memorable experiences were the ones that I wasn't even directly involved in. Like it's just sometimes other things that I observe, you know. So for example, there was an Indonesian sister that was joining us for a couple of years, and her English skills were not very strong, and so I didn't know if like is she going to be effective, and is she going to be able to answer people's questions or not. But somehow her ikhlas, her sincerity, her smile, she gave out more materials than all of the rest of us. And I saw her give so many shahadas to women. You're talking to women. She gave so many shahadas to women. And I'm like, what is she saying? Because I thought my answers were more clever and witty and humorous, right? Just ikhlas and just her smile, just her wanting to be there. So that's one thing that, you know, affected me and humbled me. And then there's lots of other little stories over the years, you know. I'd have to. I mean, one is, for example, there was an Iranian family walking by us, and the grandmother or the elderly woman in that group was just trailing behind them a little bit, and she walked by us. She saw us. She saw my wife, and then she pulled her hijab back up on her head and walked by. So what that little incident tells me is that we might have we might even provide a moral boost to Muslims who are just walking by, who don't even necessarily stop to interact or exchange salams. But it's just a good presence. And I think, especially at Yangon Dundas, I think it's a symbolic presence as well too. Like we're in the middle of the dunya, we're in the middle of the noise, we're in the middle of the music, in the middle of this very eccentric place as you had described it earlier. But Islam is still relevant. It's still here. You know what I mean? And I'm sure that many tourists during the summer from the Gulf countries, from other Muslim countries, they come and they see that and they're like, wow, you know, I mean, you know, there's an Islamic presence right here on the square, you know.
That, I believe, is a really underrated effect. I remember at our dawah booths and universities, the people who would get the most motivated and the most effective as a whole would be Muslims. Many Muslims would just become, oh, you guys are having a lecture. And sometimes the interaction would be quite humorous. We had, I remember one of the dawah booths, it was a series of events that we had. The last event was a debate that we had organized, I think between one of our Muslim speakers and a Christian. And so we were selling tickets to that event, but to non-Muslims, we were giving it for free. And so the brother, this lady comes, she's like interacting, interested. Then, you know, the brother comes and he says, okay, you know what, just take this ticket, you know, come to this event. And so she takes the ticket, she leaves, and then she comes back and she's super offended. And it was like, why? Like, why are you so offended? She's like, I'm Muslim, and you didn't charge me for this ticket. You're supposed to charge me for this ticket. And he's like, telling me after, like, how am I supposed to know you're Muslim? I like, you know, because there's no identity. You know, she's not wearing hijab or anything like that. So it was this humorous interaction. But what we gathered from that is that here's somebody you could not tell that they're Muslim, but they're coming and they're actually somehow that sparks a pride. I'm Muslim. I need to pay for this. You know, I'm coming to this thing. You know what I mean? So I think we underestimate the effect that has on people, on boosting people, their iman, that we have this presence in the middle of this dunya type of setting.
Something that I feel a little bit bad about now that I think about it is that in those first couple of years that I started the street dawah, when a Muslim would come up to the table, I wouldn't be happy about it. In my mind, I was thinking, this guy's wasting my time. Like,
Yeah.
why am I talking? I'm here to talk to the non-Muslims. You know, I
Yeah,
want to give
it's just-
dawah
yeah,
to the
yeah.
non-Muslims. But then over time, as they start telling you about their problems, I realized that no, this is also fulfilling a need here, just to listen to them and to try to advise them and counsel them and to try to connect them back with the community, connect them back with the masjid. You know, so that's another big role that dawah carriers on the street can fulfill, is just serving as a bridge, you know. Just half of the time, that's all I'm doing. I'm just talking to a non-Muslim or a Muslim, and in my mind, I'm thinking, such and such a speaker would really speak to this person's needs. Like he'll really like this speaker. So I tell him, check out this guy on YouTube. But it's but for someone else, it might be another reference. For someone else, it might be a different book, you know. So it's just serving as a bridge and trying to connect them with good, with khair. You know?
And we need people to call to that because we have people calling on your phones, on billboards, in our schools, calling to all sorts of other things.
Yeah.
We need more people calling to the khair, to the haqq.
That's the example I give at Dundas Square when sometimes people stop and ask, like, why are you doing this? And unfortunately, sometimes Muslims too, right? Muslims like, why are you doing this, brother? Not in a good way. It's like, why are you doing
critical.
this? Yeah. I'm like, well, I mean, why are you picking on me? Everyone is calling to something. Everyone is, look at the billboards. Everyone is calling to something. Yeah, we're the only ones that aren't asking for your money, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not? I would. You should do the Uno reverse card. Why not? You tell me.
Why not? Yeah.
Give me the case why I shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
You know.
But these are some of the things you have to mentally prepare yourself for. You were asking earlier, how do you prepare yourself? I mean, just be mentally prepared that you're going to meet all kinds of people, and that will unfortunately include Muslims who sometimes will put you down or demoralize you or, just sometimes. You know,
And
it happens,
any dangerous situations that you've encountered?
Well, I don't want to scare the audience away from doing street dawah,
Yeah,
right?
we gotta know about this,
Yeah. No. But I'll just repeat that ours is a unique stall at Yonge and Dundas because
Yeah.
Yonge and Dundas is a unique place.
Yeah.
It's just the busiest commercial intersection, you know, in Toronto.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, places like that do attract many people who are suffering from mental illnesses, homelessness, you know, there's druggies and things like that. So naturally, there are going to be some encounters or some people occasionally heckling you. So, I mean, I'm giving you the most extreme example ever.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm saying in 12 years, one time,
Okay.
there was a crazy guy who took off his belt and tried to like whip me.
Oh, okay.
But it was on an extremely cold winter day, so
Yeah.
I was so layered up
Yeah.
that I couldn't feel anything. I was just
So you were taking the hits.
no, but I was so layered
yeah,
up because
yeah.
it was a very cold winter day.
Yeah.
So I was wearing like jacket on top of jacket
Yeah.
and then a parka on top.
Yeah.
So no, I couldn't feel anything unless he
Yeah.
had hit my face.
Yeah.
But again, he was crazy. How do I know
Yeah.
he's crazy? He didn't have shoes on. He didn't
Yeah.
have socks on.
Yeah.
And it's like minus 10 degrees.
Yeah.
Which for you guys in Edmonton is nothing. Maybe that's a warm day. I don't know. But
that's
you
our
know.
summer. That's a balmy summer
But
day.
for us, I mean, that was a cold day. But my point being that if in 12 years there was like one incident that extreme, people living in other places in suburbs or in Saskatoon or here in Edmonton, people are friendly and even people who don't.
But I think that speaks to, I think that's a practical reality, and that speaks to us being prepared, right? Being prepared, because we've had people confrontational, even in a university setting,
yes.
even in a university setting, being aggressive, accusing, like, you know, you had this older man who was being really aggressive with the sisters. So part of our training and preparation is sisters should never be by themselves giving dawah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think those are practical steps. It's not about being afraid, because you work at a stall at a restaurant or a restaurant stall and somebody can attack you.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
So I think that's not out of the scope of reality in any situation.
Yeah.
But I think being prepared too, especially when we know living in Canada where people have been violent towards Muslims, I think just to be prepared for that, but not scared of it, because it's like with anything in life. You could be walking down the street and a Sikh guy could be walking down the street mistaken as a Muslim and being attacked. You know?
Exactly. That's right. And and with our group, we wouldn't even have one guy at the table. You know,
Yeah.
there should be a minimum of 2 or 3 guys. So
Yeah.
even for other logistical reasons, one has to go to the washroom or get a coffee. So
Yeah.
you can't just have one person. And that's that's another thing that, and not just in Dawah, I mean, in any kind of Islamic organization, just the need to respect leadership, right? Even if there's only 3 or 4 of you, one of you is going to be the Amir. And when the Amir says it's time to pack up, you know, it's getting cold now. I think it's time to go. Then we have to, you know, respect that as well.
Yeah. Are there people on the street dawah scene that you look up to?
Well, I mean, I count Speaker's Corner, Hyde Park as an example of street dawah for sure. I mean, Mansoor Ahmed. These are friends of mine too. Mansoor Ahmed and Hashim, Muhammad Hijab. All of them, they're doing a good job, you know, in their own way. Sheikh Uthman Ibn Farouk. Where is he? Is that San Diego?
San Diego.
Yeah, San Diego. Yeah, I mean, what he's doing, that's wonderful, right?
Yeah.
That's excellent. So these are people that I would like to try to emulate, you know, if I could. Yeah.
Do you feel as well? There has been some criticism that there's a new generation that because of YouTube and social media seem to be grandstanding quite a bit with the street dawah and dawah in general. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's always a danger. Like ego is always a danger with any kind of, you know, whatever religiosity or whatnot. And with us, I mean, some people have asked us, you know, why do we don't put up videos? But it's more just that it's not really our style. Occasionally, if there's a Shahadah, we'll ask the person if we can just put up their little short Shahadah clip on our Facebook page, which is called Street Dawah Toronto, by the way. But you're right; these are things we have to guard ourselves against. And that's why the learning should be going hand in hand with this stuff, right? It shouldn't just be activism.
Yes.
It should be grounded in some kind of learning, connection with the masjid, connection with elders, connection with ulama, something like that, right? Connection with peers who have more experience in that field. But it's something we always have to guard ourselves against, definitely. Yeah.
Do you stay in touch with the people that give Shahada?
Yes, so I remember one sheikh saying that it's the postnatal care that is the bigger concern, isn't it? The postnatal care. Once they take Shahada, what do you do with them now? So on our part, we make that effort, right? Like phone numbers are exchanged and emails are exchanged. But I'll be honest with you, Dr. Syed, there are a good number of people who take Shahada who then don't do their part and they don't follow up or they don't get in touch. That does happen, you know. And we know that ahead of time. We know that maybe for every 5 shahadas, maybe there's one that's going to really stick it through or whatnot. But there are people, especially there's some sisters who have stayed in touch with the sisters from our Dawah group. And once in a while, you know, you get an encouraging story. Like once what happened just a few years ago, I remember that a lady came to the stall and she said, I just wanted you to know that I took a book from your stall, you know, years ago. And that's what started my journey into researching Islam, and I became a Muslim. So, so we really thanked her for stopping to share that with us because it serves as encouragement, doesn't it? But at the end of the day, as you know, we're planting seeds, and whether they grow or not, or when they grow, is ultimately in the hands of Allah. But we're planting seeds. And because of all the tourists that come in the summer, now that hopefully the pandemic's over, hopefully it'll return to the same levels. But there's so much tourism from South America, and then there's temporary Mexican workers, farmers who walk by. So we give a lot of Spanish material out, and I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sure that there's hundreds, if not thousands, of Spanish books that we gave out, which are now physically there somewhere in South America, in someone's home, in someone's living room. So one day, inshallah, the seed will sprout. If not with the person we gave it to, maybe a family member, maybe one of their children will one day read that book.
That's interesting to see that because of the international nature of Canada specifically, as you know, and especially that you're able to reach many different parts of the world. You
Yeah.
know, especially the area that you are. That's a tourist hub.
Yeah, maybe this isn't the best term to use, but we're super spreaders, you know, young and done.
Yeah. It's a
Super
good
spreaders of the dawah.
Yeah. It's super. We gotta super spread some goodness.
Yeah,
that's
because
for
these people
sure.
are going to travel all over the globe and go
Yeah,
back home and
yeah.
visit Hong Kong and exactly.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And you know, subhanallah, you don't know where you get that hidayah. I remember a brother who's lived all his life in Saudi. He came, and he came to some of our dawah events and some of our lectures and khutbahs and things like that. And he said, "I've never." This person's coming from like what we would normally think is the hub of Islam and learning and the great giant shuyukh. He said, "I've never been touched like this about my deen that I have through these." So you don't know whose words and where the barakah and who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses as a means to guide people.
Yeah, it's all in phases. And by the way, from my experience, what I've seen is the shahadahs that we give at the table, we weren't the ones that convinced them there or anything like that. They were already at the final stage of a journey. So again, someone else planted the seeds with them. A friend at college, a friend at university, a Muslim friend at university talked to them about Islam, planted the seeds. And that original Muslim might think, well, nothing came of it. I talked to this guy about Islam. I gave him the Quran. Now I'm out of touch. Nothing happened. No, something did happen. One day he came to our table and said, you know, I really like this religion. You have a wonderful religion. It's so great. So the work's already done. All you have to, at that point, I just asked him, well, you're saying Islam is so wonderful. What's stopping you from becoming Muslim?
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of the shahadas happen. So there's other people who planted seeds, and when we give shahadas, it's the last stage. It's not like we convince them on the spot. They're people who are ready and they needed a friendly little nudge. You know?
Yeah. No, I can definitely speak to that as well. I remember there's somebody who contacted us, said, I want to talk about Islam, or I want somebody to talk to me about Islam, and I'm interested in Islam. And so I made an appointment to meet with him. We sit down. He's like, yeah, I want to give my Shahadah. It's like, I want to accept Islam. I'm like, so I have to slow him down. Okay, wait a minute. What do you know about Islam? Where did you learn about Islam?
Yeah.
So this guy went to some small town that nobody's heard of in Alberta. And in that class, there was in part of their social studies, a religion portion of that, where they talk about the world religions. And the teacher talked for just a little small portion of one class about Islam. Non-Muslim teacher.
Yeah.
You know, some random hick town, middle of the nowhere. He became so interested in Islam by learning just by that teacher that he's like, this is what caused me to want to become Muslim. I was like, okay, what do you know about it? I had to slow him down. Okay, let's do the basics. Okay, these are the basics. Do you understand? Do you agree? He's like, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
He gave his shahada. So there are people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put them on these different journeys, and they just need maybe that final person to walk them to that. Yeah.
Because what happens, Dr. Syed, is that sometimes at the workplace or at school, the Muslim has given some dawah to his non-Muslim friend, but he feels he doesn't want to step over that red line and like risk the friendship by explicitly inviting them to become Muslim. So that's another advantage of street dawah, right? And I jokingly work that into my script too when I'm giving somebody the nudge to do shahada. And I say, listen, you're never going to see me again, right? So in other words, I can ask more direct questions. Sometimes I can be a little bit more direct than their friends at work or school would want to be. So that's one advantage that we have. Maybe the Muslim friend was a little bit scared or apprehensive to explicitly invite them to Islam, but that's all that was needed at this point. The person's already converted in their heart, and all they needed was that explicit invitation. That, okay, well, are you ready? You want to say the Shahada now? And if he doesn't, nothing's lost. Like, I haven't lost a friend. I'm never going to see this person again. He's never going to see me again. You see?
What are specific things our community can do to support new reverts?
Yeah. That's a bigger question, for the Muslim organizations. But I mean, the obvious thing would be like more
from your perspective. So you've given them dawah, they've accepted Islam. What do you feel what kind of support do you think they need from the community now to maintain so there isn't that recidivism, they don't go back or they don't find that support?
Yeah. Well, I think the Muslim community is doing the right kinds of programs now, but I think we need more of the same. Like there are some great revert programs now, and there's even like I know that there's been camps, that invite reverts and free dinners and lectures for reverts. Just today, I got an email about a revert care free program and dinner and this and that in Brampton, which is one of the suburbs of Toronto. Just today, I got that email. And I forwarded it to a friend who knows who knows converts, and he might invite them. But I think more of the same. I think if a mosque only does that once or twice in the year, then or just for Eid, then that's not sufficient. So, where and when possible, maybe try it on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. And the interesting thing is, if you started on a weekly basis, thinking that there's not really a need for it on a weekly basis because we only have 3 converts at this mosque, but they're going to pull in other people. You just start the program, and I'm sure it'll grow. And I'm sure people from other parts, farther parts of the city, when they find out that one mosque there has a revert program every week, they'll even travel across the city maybe to attend that program. So that's the best answer I can think of right now, is more of the same.
Wasn't there a brother or an organization that almost had a hostel for reverts? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know in Toronto that there was a small center called P4E, Paradise Forever.
Yeah.
That was run by Muhammad Robert Heft.
Yes, maybe that's the one I'm thinking.
Yeah, but he's in and out of the country now. He's not running that. But yeah, they well, I mean, it wasn't exactly a hostel, so you might be thinking of something else.
Okay.
But he did have 2 or 3 rooms there.
Yes.
That could temporarily accommodate reverts who were forced to leave their home or something like that until they get back up on their feet. And yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, that's forward thinking. Sure, we could certainly use that.
Yeah.
We
Or
could
maybe,
certainly use something like
and then especially, I think some of them, when they're getting kicked out, maybe we need some temporary housing, things like that to provide. And
also, we shouldn't put all of the pressure on the organizations. I mean, just us as individuals, we can do so much. These large Muslim conferences that happen, what stops us from bringing a non-Muslim friend with us, right? Why does everything have to be subsidized by an organization? Like, I mean, I can't pay 1 ticket for a non-Muslim friend. So even these lectures that are happening right now with this tour that the speakers are on, the United Islamic Awareness Week, these are some great speakers coming. Abdullah Andalusi, Adnan Rashid, and Brother Farid. And so, I mean, Muslims should try to bring some of their non-Muslim friends. It's not that difficult, right?
Who, in your experience, has been the most receptive to the dawah? Like, is it men versus women, or certain, are people like from a certain age demographic? Like, what kind of demographics have you witnessed and experienced are the most receptive?
Yeah, again, Toronto is so mixed that no one ethnicity or linguistic group immediately sticks out in my mind right now. No one group sticks out. It really has been from diverse backgrounds. Like really, diverse. Like it could be a Chinese one day, it could be a Nigerian lady, or it could be an Ethiopian man. It's been very, very diverse. But in terms of taking our materials, I found that South Americans rarely say no. I found that Mexicans and other Spanish speaking people rarely say no. Now, maybe that's aided by the fact that I say Espanol. maybe that helps. But again, when I say Chinese and offer it to Chinese people, they don't take it in the same numbers or to the same degree that I found Mexicans and other South Americans. They're happy to take it. If you tell them you have something in Spanish and it's free, which I forget the word for free now, but yeah, Espanol. They're really happy to take it.
Really?
Yeah.
It seems like there is a really big potential within the Latin American community for dawah.
I know Latinos in the U.S. have been a big group that have been converting.
It seems that even with the World Cup in Qatar, many of the people who came from Latin American countries, Mexico, there was a huge interest. Many of the reverts, many people accepting Islam.
Yeah. I was in Qatar, so this is also a partial answer to your question. Is that when I was in Qatar, the most shahadahs that I saw happening, but again, there is a variable that might account for that. I'll come to that in a minute. But me personally, what I saw was actually Filipino ladies who were they were migrant workers or temporary workers there in Qatar.
Okay.
And by the way, that I was that was very heartwarming, and I was happy to see that because we do hear a lot about migrant workers from the Philippines and from India being mistreated in the Gulf countries, and I'm sure like it happens, and that's very unfortunate. It's un-Islamic. But the fact that I saw so many Filipino ladies working there, becoming Muslim in front of my eyes, that told me that they had a positive experience with the Arab Muslim families that they live with. They were well treated. They haven't been turned off from Islam in that way. But the variable that I was alluding to was a brother from Aira from the Philippines that they had brought. I think his name was Abdul Rashid. I know his other name was Romeo. But that guy, mashallah, was a Shahadah machine. Shahadah machine. Like, I wish I knew what he was saying in Tagalog to these ladies.
Yeah.
But man, they were mesmerized. They were listening to him. I said, "You've got the right name, Romeo. You've got the right name."
Yeah.
I don't know what he was saying to them, but they were just converting like en masse.
You know, that's interesting you say that, because I still remember this vividly. I was in a gathering with Sheikh Dr. Bilal Phillips.
Okay.
And we had other senior shuyukh amongst us, like Sheikh Ja'far Idris. So there was a lot of people who are giants in the da'wah, especially that have affected us in the Western world. And we were talking, and they were saying, which part of the world, where have you gone in the world where the people are the most receptive to Islam and has the greatest potential? And that's what Dr. Bilal Phillips said. He said the Philippines. He said the Philippines, I've seen the most receptive to the da'wah and the most people accepting Islam there.
Interesting. Wow.
And that was 23 years ago.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think even their attachment to Mary and all of that we can incorporate that into our dawah and kind of explain to them, for example, the role of Hazrat Maryam in Islam and so forth. One thing just popped into my mind, Dr. Syed. Earlier on, you asked about people in the street dawah field that I look up to. So one of our Canadian own, Sheikh Mustafa Khattab.
Yes.
Yeah, who of course is the translator of the Quran into the clear Quran. And mashallah, we're so proud of him for having done that, because that's like the preferred translation now, even in England. This is what they're giving out now on the streets, the clear Quran. But no, he gets his hands dirty. Like he does street dawah, not with our group. He does it at, I think, Young and Bloor with Ira Canada.
Okay.
But again, I'm impressed because that's maybe I think that's a rare example of a scholar, of an imam who also kind of gets involved, in street dawah. And again, I haven't come across any videos of his doing street dawah, so it's not about grandstanding or anything like that. He gets his hands dirty and he just gets involved on the street level as well.
Yeah. I hope people can take some benefit from this in terms of some of the younger people coming up. Usually people, they imitate or they gravitate towards what they see. And because a lot of what I feel the people are trying to do it in a not necessarily a traditional way, but in a way where they're not hyper focused on everything being liked and viewed. You know what I mean? I think there needs to be some type of connection. So if you're getting into, like, you have many of the young generation getting hyped up about dawah, instead of trying to imitate and emulate all the latest trending type of dawah that they may see online, I think there needs to be some type of connection with people that are unseen, that are doing a lot of the work in the trenches without a lot of the accolades and whatnot, to really develop the mentorship, from these people. Yeah, absolutely. And one of those mentors, I would say, is the Amir of our Sunday Dawah group, Street Dawah Toronto. He's one of the unsung heroes in my mind. Nobody knows him other than us. He's just a quiet guy in the background. But the reason we've kept him as our Amir is because, again, his consistency, his dedication, and just his discipline. To be honest with you, discipline meaning just keeping track of, okay, how many books do we have left and how many Qurans do we have left? Okay, I have to do a back order of this and another order of this, and he's the one holding it all together. And nobody knows who he is, but I tell him, inshallah, on the Day of Judgment,
He'll get his certificate and his acknowledgement from the angels, inshallah. He's a really good brother. So,
Inshallah.
yeah, exactly. The real heroes are unsung heroes in the background that are just holding things together. They're the administrators or the organizers, and every Saturday he forwards out emails to everyone who has ever volunteered with this group and reminds them tomorrow 1 p.m. we're coming together. So these little things, they matter a lot. They count a lot. It's what holds things together.
Yes, inshallah, I think that'll be a good trip for the Life Haqq team when we go out to we go to Toronto often, but to connect with you and witness and help contribute whatever we can
Exactly,
to the
with
Street
our
Dawah.
Sunday group, and then with IRA Canada at a different location, you get a different feel.
Yeah.
And exactly, no, we would love to have you, because I know you would have so much to contribute. We would be learning from you at that point. So
we
please
would,
do come.
and also for young guys coming up, how can they connect with you that are in the Toronto area to get involved with your team?
If they're in the Toronto area, then they can message Street Dawah Toronto on Facebook. We do actually respond. Again, there's a brother who is consistent. He does actually consistently respond to that. And if it's a lady, then my wife can respond to them and connect with them, or talk to them on Zoom and get an idea of whether they would be a fit or not.
So it's a family affair for you, mashallah.
Yeah. My wife joins because there's a shortage of women volunteers, and maybe for good reason. Maybe it's not the best place, necessarily, but sometimes you need some sister representation, not just for superficial reasons, but for when a 50-year-old Canadian white non-Muslim lady stops and asks about the hijab, to be honest with you, right? Even all of your knowledge won't really count for much when you're answering the question about hijab to her. It could be the Grand Mufti of Lebanon answering the question. It's not going to count for much because you're still a man. You don't have to wear the hijab, right? You're talking about how wonderful it is. Yeah, but you don't have to wear it. So now when you have a sister explaining it, passionately and in light of her experiences, sometimes that can count for a lot more, right? So it's not just about scripted answers and academic answers. It's about connecting with the other person as a human being, and that can have a big impact.
Well, I've always said to my own family, the family that does da'wah together stays together. I think that's a powerful thing to bind people together, and there's a lot of barakah, I feel, that are affected with the relationships and the da'wah. Jazakallah khair for your time here and sharing your experience and your contribution and your effort, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept it on your mizan.
Likewise for you, wa iyakum. Thank you for the work that you do. It was exciting for me to be here at Life Haqq, and it was good to see the studio, the setup, and it makes me proud and happy that we've got this in Canada. We've got this going in Canada. This kind of a setup, this kind of a team that you've got together, mashallah. And that reminds me of. There's so many benefits, but it just reminded me of another final point. Is that another benefit of the dawah is that you will meet such wonderful people that will help you improve and become better.
True.
I've met people that it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that meeting them and becoming friends with them changed my life. I don't think I'd be here talking to you right now. I wouldn't have met you, but for the involvement in the dawah scene. So you meet some wonderful people, and it leads to hopefully your personal growth and improvement.
I've always said that there's no better reasoning to come together than for a righteous cause. I think the most blessed friendships are made by that. The most blessed relationships are made by that. And you discover people that you would never. And I remember from a young age, it doesn't matter the age or where the person is from. I remember one of the shuyukh I told you that I study with in Toronto. I would go and study with him. He has kids my age. And they're like, well, let's go out. I'm like, no, I want to sit with your dad and talk to your dad. You know what I mean? Because and it doesn't matter, the age, much older, younger, whatever. Because when you have that righteous, passionate cause that binds you together, there's a barakah, there's a blessing that's in there.
And on that point of age, I would really like to kind of, invite and call out. Brothers who are also, in their 40s and 50s, and it might help. It might help if they were raised here, if they're kind of culturally, used to the scene and they know how to speak to people. Because there is currently, I feel, with respect to everybody in the Dawah scene, like there's kind of an over-representation of young guys in their 20s. And I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from joining, but young guys from their 20s bring a certain strength and dynamic to the Dawah scene, and they have an energy, and they have a physical energy and strength, and stamina that we need. But guys who are a little bit older with a few white hairs in their goatee and their beard can also bring a different kind of energy and vibe and a certain experience or maturity. And unfortunately, it seems to me like people who are very excited about doing dawah in their 20s kind of they drop off by the time they're in their mid 30s. They're married, they got kids, they have a job. We understand. I mean, there's other demands on your time. But if you can make the time, Dr. Syed, right? If I can make some time, then the rest of us can make some time too. So we should never kind of like outgrow dawah, And it doesn't have to be limited to street dawah. That's not for everybody. But some kind of dawah activity, involvement in some kind of organization, maybe that's a friendly challenge for the 20s, for the guys who are out there in their 20s. Okay, maintain this. Don't forget this excitement. Don't forget this ambition. Don't lose that. Try to hold on to that and continue, even if you do less at a lesser pace. But always stay connected to it.
Yeah, you realize you look back at it. For myself, it's been decades. So 23 plus years, and I would not give up a single one of those years being involved in the dawah, because I truly believe in every aspect of my life. If Allah yahfad, like you help the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you help the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help you and preserve you. I truly believe that. I've seen it manifest itself in my life on a regular basis. Jazakallah khair. And to our audience, I hope you can really benefit from today's episode. And as always, remember, we live by the haqq, we die by the haqq, and just when you think life is stuck, tune into Life Haqq. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.